a warm welcome to the entire crowd here and on the interwebs. Let's get started by just throwing the topics to the wall, and we will talk about ourselves first, introduce ourselves, our shared office space. Then we will talk about the making of our short film, show the short film, of course, and we will go around and check out character creation, which is a bit of character design, rigging, um, animation, and storytelling. Then we will switch over to Andy, and he will do the lighting, shading, and compositing part. So let's start with the introduction, the who's that and why. So we are former colleagues from the university, friends, and we joined forces later up and created a shared office space because we are all freelancers. So everybody is his own own freelancing bureau, and we joined forces to do bigger projects together. Maybe also grab a beer afterwards and have fun all the time. So up to
Yeah,
you.
that's me, right. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Andi Wenzel, and is this one working? Check, check. Do you hear me? Is it on? Check. Is the micro on? It's on, right? Okay, sorry. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Andi Wenzel. I'm a freelance visual effects artist, and during my about 10 years of work experience, I mainly focus on lighting, shading, and compositing. But I still see myself as a kind of a 3D generalist, and I do lots of different kind of work. So here's just a small collection of some of my more recent projects, and as you can see, it's quite a variation of different styles and disciplines, and because that's what I like about being a generalist. It just never gets boring.
My name is Erduman, and I also started as a generalist in 2006. But the issue is, I love to do characters, so I had no choice to just specialize in this field. So I'm having clients worldwide, and we all in the office work. We all in the office work worldwide over the internet, and I started with the animation as I mentioned, and I spread out to the other jobs like rigging and sculpting. I mostly do advertisement and TV commercials, but I also have art projects, and I also like to do free projects. And this short film kind of branched over, so it's a free project turned into a commercial one. So let's start with the making of. We have a good relationship with Maxon since 2011 when people of us got into beta testing and reaching out to the developers. And over time, we formed friendships and talked to the marketing guys, and this resulted in 2017 Schism, which is directed by Simon Fiedler and shows the new fracture tools of Cinema 4D. And I was doing the character animations back then, and our guy Bernd Kopf did the sound design, and our designer, in-house designer, and Houdini mastermind Bastian did the typography. And we always wanted to branch out and do a bigger, full-fledged release film. And in R22, in my opinion, we had some sort of character release with lots of character features. Of course, there were also features that were not character related. So we said to Maxon, hey, come on, now or never, let's do a character short film for this release and introduce all the character tools in there. And the short film was born because Maxon said, yes, let's do it. And I started doing research on what to show. And what I wanted to do, what the first idea was, I wanted to show a film from artists for artists, so everyone can relate. I wanted to show a story, and since my sister is a curator at the Ottoman art in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, I am very fond of history and art history. So I decided, let's do a Renaissance painter. Also, I was attending at the IBC in 2019, and we were at the Rijksmuseum, so I got the inspiration to do this Rembrandt style, because those are the paintings, right? So I wanted to show a Renaissance artist. But not this one. I wanted to show a happy one that's motivated and wants to do art, right? As we all do. But I also wanted to give him our tools. And I wanted him to struggle. So he needs to do tutorials and doesn't get it right. And sometimes he questions himself. So, like Bob Ross said, sometimes in the process of making art, you have these happy accidents. And you first think, oh, it's all going wrong. But at the end, you have success through that. And that's what I wanted also to show. So without further ado, here's our short film.
Here we can see a true master of the hands the stone.
Ladies and gentlemen, shortly our gallery will close its doors. We hope you enjoyed our exhibition on Antonio Reggaeton and wish you a pleasant day.
Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. And that's in the ending. I wanted to show how those happy accidents happen and how, by accident, he gets famous and still lives through his art centuries afterwards. You also see in the background how he's in a better place, like a palace, and he made himself another statue, and that statue seems to work and live. So let's talk about the character creation part. Our characters don't bite. At least they don't bite hard. Our pipeline is the Cinema 4D pipeline with ZBrush, Substance Painter, and for rendering we use Redshift. I wanted to talk about ZBrush a bit because my personal experience was kind of bumpy first. Because ZBrush has a much more steeper learning curve than Cinema 4D. The technology is a thing. You have to learn the interface, the controls, and everything. But at the other side, you also have to learn the art, how the anatomy works, how style is created, and it needs to look good from every angle. So I first started during my time at the university in 2008 or 2009, and I didn't have a real guide. So I had the energy, I wanted to sculpt the characters, but I don't know, or I didn't get how the camera works. And all the menus were hidden, there were no icons, just text, and I didn't know what each brush does. And I didn't get the object system at all. So I started sculpting, making tutorials, etc., etc. And after 4 years of trying, I kind of ended up not progressing anymore. But things changed, and ZBrush Live came online, and we have tons of stuff going on. and live streams are happening, and people like Michael Pavlovich and Paul Galbary are doing a lot. They're showing how to do ZBrush and how to improve, and the whole artistical vibe is really going forward there. As an example, how much stuff is happening is this is a calendar of the streams just for May 22. So it's like a TV broadcast. Every day there's something on. Also here you see the playlist of the ZBrush channel, which is tons of stuff. It doesn't even stop there. Yeah, and there are lots of artists streaming, and one of those guys was Shane Olsen. And he was Shane was head of the character department of Disney Interactive, and he was responsible for the Disney Infinity branch, which was famous for its special stylization. And he approached me by accident. We came to chat a bit, and he said he's preparing this 3D character workshop where you learn a character creation from A to Z. From I've opened ZBrush the first time to I'm earning money with it. Yeah, and the first question you have is, well, what do I get? And for starters, you pay once, you have lifetime membership. That's good already. And it kind of eases the entry level. So this is the standard layout of ZBrush, and it changes a bit, and you get the brushes underneath. You have this special pop-up menu with all you need for the character creation at your fingertips. And of course, he also teaches you something like anatomy, stylization, how to actually sculpt. And it goes further and further, and you have the technical knowledge and the artistic knowledge. You even can print your 3D sculptures out. And the next thing is, how was this inspired? As I mentioned before, they created the Disney Infinity branch, and they needed to push out the stylization really fast. So Shane was started as an animator, and this book is known by any animator. Perhaps you know that too. And it's by Preston Blair, and he has this definition that each drawn character is first created by primitive objects. And basically that's what the course you learn in the course. You have those primitive objects and you put them together and sculpt on them and define them, redefine them, and you have a really good character base to sculpt on. Those are students' examples, and those are mine. I was a bit afraid of it, and I took the entry-level course, which is just a bust. And I wasn't satisfied, so I started to do busts all the time and try to improve there. So I became a bust buster. So those are the busts I did in the first 6 months, and you see it begins with "Nyeh," and it gets really good on the right side. And the right guy is, for example, to the artista. But I designed him without knowing that I will reuse him in a short film. So that would be a special agent, a British gentleman spy in the 60s. And I reused him to be an Italian Renaissance painter. So after that, my guided experience was a totally different one. Of course, I still love to sculpt the characters, but I get how the camera works, because if you have something on the table and you want to do the real sculpting and you just turn it and look from it at all times. So that's why the camera is totally different compared to other 3D packages. The brushes are really good. Also, you get a brush pack from Shane, which is has other names, and you know how this all works. And the third thing is that the object system is actually really cool, because you have different undo levels for each object. So this is totally separated. So for me, it was like opening Pandora's box. But let's get back to him and how he was created. So here you see the IMM brush, which is the primitive brush where you can add stuff there. So those could be arms, for example. I'm adding those just to show you. Or those cylinders. That could be ears or eyes or something. And they came already with the right pivot and the right resolution. So you can scale them and move them around. And if you continue, you just get in the flow. So here I create the skull, and then I'm adding the chin, sculpting a bit on the nose, creating the ears, for example, from again that cylinder, refining everything, creating the eyes, creating the chin again. And if you're really talented, like this guy, Marc Brunet, you end up with a character like this. And everything are separated parts. So this is really good manageable because it's a dynamic subdivision, like in cinema, it's procedural. And you can have low topology and you don't end up doing something wrong. And you can also do a remesh by union, which means it's a Boolean, and you can force the remeshing to consider those colorful spaces there. So the edge flow goes along. And this looks great for an procedural generated edge flow, but it's not perfect because it's not designed to work for deformation. It's just following the lines. So what I did this kind of Incredibles, the Pixar's Incredibles mask to force the edge flow to go around here. The same is on the nose and the mouth. So we have this flow, and it's great for sculpting. I just did this once and just continued further and further to have this guy then. And I already had details here in the beard, etc., etc. And with the with the face done, I started doing the body, which was already, as I described, the primitive shapes. So I combined everything and smoothed it down, and I ended up with this one. I refined the hands and the silhouette. So back here I had this separate object, so I could just move the whole sphere, create another shape in the silhouette. So I had different shapes there, and it was a very fluid process to just go through it. And after the body was done, I created the cloth just very rough. I had the inspirations on top and just started sculpting and doing geometry. And after that, I subdivided everything and started creating the folds and the details like this one, and also had the polygroups masking the folds inside, so I could work on that also. And I ended up with a mesh that has several millions of polygons like this. And it's looking good, it has all the details, but it's not possible to animate it or deform it properly. So we had to do manual topology, and that is lightweight and designed to work well with deformation. Same is for the cloth. And after we had the retopo done, I reprojected it. That's a bit weird of a process, so I would go into details more. So imagine this is the high poly sculpt with millions of polygons. And this is the low poly sculpt in green. And what I did is I added topology. So this is more mesh information. And then I projected it. So the vertex movement is closer to the yellow one, like this. But I still can go downwards in the subdivision. So underneath the green one, which has the information and the detail, I still have the low one, which is here. So once more, this is the high poly in gray, and in green we have the low poly, and then I reprojected everything. And with that reprojection I can work because I have functionality in the UVs, and I can transform everything. So speaking of UVs, let's start talking about texturing and play with the colors, and don't get dirty while doing it. So for texturing, we used Substance Painter because this program has a huge library of preset materials and community built material I use. So it's just more or less drag and drop, do some tweakings here and there. And what you do is you bake the high poly detail into the low poly UVs. So you have a texture map describing how the high poly looks on the low poly. For example, you have ambient occlusion or the curvature, which is great for surfaces of metal. You have the information in the normal map, the position paths, where you can have something with different UVs, but the world space position is there. And you have ID maps, where you can say this is metal, this is cloth. And this is the baking process, which is quite nice and very, very artist-friendly. Just push the button and it calculates everything. And as you can see here, here's the rendering, and if you take a look at the beard, you now have the details here. And this works through every UV map. And as a comparison, I can also show you the low poly one. So here the details are lost. This is the one that's underneath there with the mesh information. And the next thing I could do, just texture everything. And with all those informations, it was really easy to do high detail stuff like those strokes, hair strokes. And if you see how the light wraps around it, it shows more than there is actually. And this shows how well the software worked together. Even later on when we're rendering in Redshift. And one thing that's also good is, of course, what I mentioned, I can just slap on a leather material. And here I have the surface imperfections and the curvature. And you see how this is has edge wear damage and everything. It was just one button click, which is amazing. And Maxon also asked us to do another short film in a short period of time, which is Christmas-based. So we also did that. And he wears a leather jacket here. So that was just one click. And during the production, we had to do all the set dressing and do the props. So what we also did was just press a button and create the automatic UVs, then slap the smart materials on it, and it's done. Looking good for this box, looking good for the table, and looking good for the chisel. So I was able to to texture the entire set, all the props in just one day. And those are the shading nodes in Redshift. So it's just a regular PBR material workflow. I just had added some ramps here to recalculate the gray tones to match what I wanted. So let's continue and go to rigging. It stings a little bit. For rigging, we use the Toon rig, which was developed by Sebastian Pfeiffer, and it's very flexible. So you have a very good body rig and a very good face rig. And the procedure is also pretty nice. So it's an auto rigger which can be customized. So you just add the spine, the arms, and the legs. And then you can go into adjust mode and adjust everything. And if you're quickly like me, you do it like this. And you're done. And you can instantly start animating the character. It also has great controllers for the finger shapes. And fun fact, those tiny bubbles here were the pins that the statue had. And the face is a joint-based face, so this is quite heavy on the weight painting because you have to do those little nice fall-offs between the joints. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty nice, and it works fine. So another thing is how the eyelids work. They have this perfect round blink motion there, and you have additional features also. The lips are also spline IK, and here you can see how I just move the controller to the side, but the spline is working around the curvature. And also, if you press it up, the cheeks come out to preserve the volume, and this is also automatically. And you can really sculpt 2D stylized round shapes like drops or something, which is really amazing. Let's head to animation. Nothing is set in stone, right? So that's a really important point in storytelling, because you have to be very rough at the beginning and get into the details after another. So normally you just do a storyboard, like a comic, then you process and do some time and try out cameras, do a 3D animatic, and then you record your animation reference. The problem is when I draw a storyboard, it looks like this. And so we skipped the whole part with the 3D animatic, drew a storyboard like this, and then instantly did the animation reference. And we actually used this one, the animation reference, as an animatic. So we were just jumping back and forth, creating new cameras, trying things out, downloading it, editing it. If it works, it's in. If it's not working, it's out. We reshoot. And we did this one day, and the entire story was there. And now I present the new thing. That's a new workflow for me. It's the reference storymatic. Patent pending. And here it is. And you see the comparison between the final movie and our reference shoot. And in some points you see we had some decisions made and changed it just a tiny bit here and there. Camera angles, gestures. And the animation workflow normally is like, thank you so much. The animation workflow is like doing the blocking first, again from rough to fine details. So you first have the blocking, the storytelling poses, then you have the splining where the computer interpolates between keyframes and you add secondary motion and in-betweens. And then you have the polish where you really massage the curves and it's getting like physical correct and everything. So here's how we build up a shot. Again, this doesn't make any sense. I don't even understand it right now with the storyboard I drew, but back then. So here's the reference, then the storytelling poses, just the minimum amount to tell the story. And now the blocking. And here we didn't have the Italian pose during the ego perspective. It happened here in the splining. So now you see the pose. And that's the final rendering. Speaking of final rendering, Andi, would you like to tell something about lighting?
Yeah, sure, I would love to.
It's yours.
All right, so when I joined the team, the animation was quite finished and all the props and all the set was built. The thing that was still missing was the final look of the film. So I had the pleasure to be responsible for that. And now I'm going to show you all the steps in between the viewport version on the left to the final image on the right. So, but where to start? When you do a motion graphics project, you usually just want your image to look great and you can start playing around with lights right away. But when you have a story-based project, a narrative project like this one, the concept becomes much more important because you always have to put the story first. You have to serve the story. And so the first thing you would do here is to read the script, because in the script there's already tons of information that you need for your lighting. For example, the time of day. In Latista we knew it plays during night, so we have the moonlight coming through the window. That's one thing we already know. The location, it's a dark studio, only lit by candlelight, so another important information for lighting. And the next thing would always be to look at lots and lots of references. It can't be said enough. So references are really important. And this was quite easy on this one because the story takes place during the Renaissance and it should be an homage to classic art. So we had already lots of good references. All the famous paintings of Rembrandt, Vermeer and so on. And we wanted to transfer this kind of look to our film in the end. So as you can see here, the look already it's all about lighting. So light is super important in these images, and it's used to guide the viewer's eye to you know where to look and where the story happens actually. So we already identified our light sources. It's the moonlight and the candlelight. So we have to stick to these main light sources throughout the whole film. And then the first important step would be to build a master light rig. So this then serves as a base for all of the shots in the film. And it's really good to stay organized like this. So it's kind of the same as you would work on a film set. You always would start with the widest shot. It's the establishing shot, so to say, and then you afterwards you would refine your light for the close-ups. And so you would take this establishing shot to create the master light rig and to create your major mood of the film. Yeah, right. And there you can you have the difference between the set lighting. You would always start with the set lighting so that the location looks good and the mood is right. And afterwards you can add some additional lighting for the character that he looks great in his surrounding as well. All right, and here you can see how this light rig looked like in the end. So I have a directional light, that's the moon coming through the window, a soft ambient skylight through the windows as well. We have the candle lights and an additional table lamp that's kind of there to guide the viewer's eye, to give more focus on the table and kind of create a natural vignetting. So another great thing about this was that we already had a nice complementary color scheme because of the cold moonlight from the window and the warm light from the candles, and that's always nice to have. And as you can see, the table light kind of reassembles the look of the classic art references you saw. So our set lighting then looked like this, and we already liked the mood of the whole thing, but the thing that's still missing is a nice light on the character. He just doesn't pop out, and we, as a viewer, we don't look at him directly. So I then added another character light rig, just some lights for the character, and what's important here is that you have to stay true to your master light rig, and you just kind of emphasize the lights that are already there, and you don't build. It makes no sense to put a key light on the other side than the window light is, for example. So then, then it just looks fake. And again, at this point, you can look at your storytelling again, because maybe you want to show the character in a specific kind of mood. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Or is he sad? Whatever. And this can help you with making lighting decisions as well. And of course, you have to look at the composition as well, because mostly you want the character to stand out in front of the background, so to give it a better readability. In this case, we wanted to combine this kind of Rembrandt look, this soft light that's coming from the side usually, but give it more like a cartoony feel to it. So the character light rig in the end was super easy as well. We have a key light that coming from the same direction than the light from the window. We have a rim light that's pretty strong, warm rim that is supposed to come from the candlelight. And an additional eye specular just to give a specular on the eyes to give the character more life. So you can see both of these lights. All right, this is the character lighting alone, and now the character kind of looks nice, and he gets separated from the background pretty nice. So when you turn on all these individual lights, you can see the difference between them. And in the end, we get this master light rig that serves then as a base for all of our shots, and we were quite happy with that. So this was the starting point for all of the other shots. The next thing is to organize your shots. You try to put them into different groups, into different categories, like this. You see they're pretty similar shots. And then we could build like a key light rig, so to say, out of the master light rig. That's a light rig for this particular group where you can tweak some lighting, and afterwards in the end you would do this lighting on the shot by shot basis. So this is a good workflow to stay organized and to stay consistent with your look throughout the whole film. And it's kind of the same as you would work on a film set. You would first shoot all of the shots from one direction and move closer, and then you would turn around and do the reverse shots and tweak your lighting. So it's kind of the same. All right, here just a few examples of some shots and the different lights that were used for this one. On some shots like this, we have an additional special light here, the glowing pin. And as you can see on the middle right, there's a special light just for this one that we can use. The interesting part on the reverse shot is that here the warm candle light that was the rim on the artist here becomes kind of the key light on the bust, and that's interesting because we can show this character in a totally different mood and personality than the artist, and that again that serves the story, and that's all we want to do. The red color of the light and the flickering of the candles just make him look a bit, I don't know, evil or edgy. So that's what we wanted to achieve here. The light rig in cinema, to stay organized, I organized it into 2 different categories again. And we have the natural light sources, that's the moonlight, the window light, and the candles. And depending on the shot, we have some additional prop lights to make specific props just look better. And of course the character light rig as well. So these are the components of all of the shots. And as you can see on the right, I already organized it into different light groups, and these will become relevant for rendering later on. And if you want to learn more about lighting, this is just an awesome reference. I learned so much about lighting on this website by Chris Brayon, I don't know. So it's awesome reference for lighting. All right, the next step would be rendering. So how do we get from our 3D scene to our 2D images? And here I don't want to talk about samples and render engines too much. It's more about the choices you take during rendering that will help you in the creative process afterwards. So to me, rendering is kind of the link between lighting, shading, and compositing, because we have a choice of how much control we want to have in compositing afterwards. So do we want to be able to change our lighting in compositing, or do we want to be able to change the look of the materials? And we have to think about that. So good planning is important. And so as I mentioned, we have the choice between the material passes like diffuse, reflection, refraction, and so on, and the light passes. That's what we did on Latissa, because lighting for us was the most important part of the look of the film. So we wanted to be able to tweak this in compositing afterwards. And in addition to these beauty passes, you can also use some so-called utility passes, special data passes like a depth channel, world position pass, and so on, that can help you with special tasks in compositing. And despite you have so many possibilities in compositing later on, and you can change the whole look, it's always a good idea to stay as close as possible to the final look in 3D. It's just more effective, and it's faster workflow, I think. And of course, you have to think about what kind of passes do you really need, because it doesn't make sense to render out each and every pass there is, because then you would end up with a massive amount of storage space, and that's just not effective. And yeah, just a quick summary why working with passes for me is just so great, because when you render without passes, you kind of bake down all the information you have into one global image, and then you are only able to do changes on this global image. It's nothing more like grading. You can just do basic color grading, use some masks, for example. But if you render with passes, you maintain all the information you have throughout compositing, and you can change so many details in compositing later on. And the way I like to think about it is that you have the possibility to become kind of the shading artist in compositing if you're using shading the shading passes, and you could change the amount of subsurface scattering, you could change the color of your reflections, and so on. And if you use lighting passes, then you kind of become the lighting artist in compositing later on. And you can change color temperatures, intensities of all your different lights. So just a few words about the render settings and my AOV setup. You always have to render a linear, do a proper linear workflow if you want to do compositing, because otherwise it would just not be the correct way and look right. And I usually at my beauty passes I always render an EXR half-load DWAB compression. That's for DreamWorks animation something. So I guess these guys know what they're doing. And it's just a good. You get so much smaller file size, but no visible loss in quality. So that's a good thing. And your utility passes, you would need all the 32-bit on here because you need all the information you can get out of these. And what I really love is the Cryptomat. You can render this with Redshift as well. And it's just a huge time saver because you don't have to think about your masks and for which elements you would need masks. The Cryptomat just gives you a mask for all of your elements on the shot, and you can decide later on, I need a mask for this and for that, and you don't have to re-render anything. And another good thing in Redshift are custom AOVs. We use this on some shots in the film, for example in this one where he does the weight painting on the bust. And so I wanted to be able to have masks for compositing for these areas. And so I kind of built my own puzzle mat. And how this looks like in Redshift is you just would put in the information of your animated vertex maps in Cinema 4D and put them in the color to AOV node. And then you can save this as a custom AOV that's called paint mask in this case. So Redshift was the perfect choice because it's fast, it's super flexible because of all the render settings you can choose, and I really love the AOV setup there with the AOV manager, and of course it's super good integrated into Cinema 4D. So the last step would be the compositing. So now that we have made our choices for rendering and everything rendered out smoothly without any problems, like always, of course, then we can do our compositing. And the first thing when you render with passes would always be to get back to your beauty pass. And what this means is you take all of your different, in this case, all the light passes, but it's the same when you use material passes. You would just add them on top of each other with a simple plus operation. And in the end, you would get the exact same image that you saw in your render view in the 3D package. So, and this is always the starting points. And here you can see if you have done any mistakes. And if it looks the same than your render view, then the render view, then the setup works and everything's fine. And what this looks like is just if we add all the passes, we add one each light on top of each other, and then in the end we end up with the picture that looks exactly like the picture in our render view. So, but this is now where the real fun starts. Now you can you have the ability to adjust all your individual lights individually. So these are my light passes, as you can see here, and I can do color corrections on the single lights, on each individual lights, and this is super powerful. It's like color grading for the individual lights, and it's like an enhanced kind of grading. So, and you have so many possibilities with this. And here in the end, I have some other global corrections, color corrections, and some glow and some effects. And this again would be like a template, a compositing template for all of the other shots in the film. So it's the same workflow with lighting. You always start with the template, with the thing that works for most of the shots, and then you use it as a starting point. And yeah, you do this that your look is consistent throughout the whole film. And this was the raw render view out of 3D, and after the compositing, it looks like this. The changes may look pretty subtle in some cases, and we added some glow, we added lots of grading stuff, and the snow outside. But although the changes may be subtle, most of these corrections wouldn't be possible on a global image. It's just possible because we have all these individual light passes. And here's just a quick walkthrough through Fusion. I did the compositing in Fusion, and here you can see all the adjustments you can make on your individual lights. You can change temperatures, intensities, and here you can imagine the power of it and how much you can do afterwards. I have only the volumetrics. These are global color corrections. And the glow, and because I have a light pass of the candles, I can do the glow only on the candles. So I don't have to process it on the whole image. That's another really powerful thing. So why did we choose light passes on this film? So as I said, the lighting on this one was the most important part of the look and the mood of the film. So we knew that I knew that I want to be able to change the lights and to adjust the lights afterwards in compositing. And when you think about grading, it's nothing more than the manipulation of light. So you adjust your highlights, your shadows, your midtones. It's all light related. So why not do this for each and every light individually? And just to give you an idea what's possible with this, here are some quick and dirty tests that I did to try out different looks, all with the same 3D render. So this is the raw 3D render that we had, and out of this was the final look of the film. But because I have all these individual passes, I could have done a more night version where the candlelight is warmer and there's almost no moonlight, or I could do a daylight version where there's sun coming in through the window, or I can do some, I don't know, super stylized stuff that's magical, mystical, whatever. And of course, this looks a bit silly, but just to give you an idea of what's possible. Or you could do much more focus on the table and dim down the other lights. And again, this is all done with the same 3D render. It's all the same image, and because I have these individual passes, I'm able to do all these changes. So it's really good for look development and compositing. Another great thing is we are able to animate individual lights. So in this case, we could make the candlelight flickering. That's what we did. And we did this in compositing and not in rendering. So we are able to adjust it afterwards. And another thing that's pretty handy is often you have some issues that just appear on a single light. Maybe in the reflections of a really bright and small light source, for example, you have fireflies, so it's flickering. And if you have this pass individually, you can deal with the issue in compositing just on this single pass, and it's much easier than to fix it when you only have the final image. So the last steps in compositing, like always, is some nice glow, some nice exponential glow. And as I mentioned, because we have the light passes, I can choose on which light I want to have this glow. And in this case, it's mostly only the candlelight that has the most glow. And we have some dust particles floating around to give it a bit more realism as well. And I was able to use the light cones from the moonlight and from the table light, for example, to use as a mask for the dust particles. So they only appear in the areas where the light is. So that's another great thing. Yeah, the cinematic look. I mean, of course, all these small adjustments you make to get to a cinematic look in the end. And just to wrap it up and to recap all that I was talking about, here's just a breakdown of this is a Christmas version of the film. And here you can see all the passes coming together and all the stuff that was done in compositing later on, the different light passes. And yeah, and what I love about this is sometimes you see an individual light pass and it alone looks super interesting or super nice. And I thought about making the film with only the candlelights on and or something. It's yeah. All right, so that's it for the making of Latista.